get started. I was waiting for our president, but she's been delayed. I'm Stephanie Harlan, the program chair of the League of Women Voters, Santa Cruz County, and welcome all of you. Thank you very much for being here for this very interesting program. The camera, the television on this side is not working, so if you want to watch on the television, just this side is working. And I hope you've all had a chance to get some coffee or tea or water and bagels and cream cheese. We have a wonderful program today to talk about our local water situation and focusing on the Soquel Creek Water District and what their plans are for the future. We have a couple of board members here. Daniels is here, and Carla Christensen is here. So if you have any questions, and the general manager Ron Duncan is here afterwards, please see them. So I'd like to welcome Darcy Pruitt and Heidi Luckenbach and Melanie Mow Schumacher, our speakers today, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves because they have a lot of experience and a lot of very interesting things that they've done in their careers. So I'm going to have them give you a little bit more information on that. We have questions and we have cards, and if you would like to ask a question, raise your hand and we'll give you a card and we'll collect that, and then our moderator will ask the questions at the end of the program. Thank you very much. Darcy is going to start.
Thank you, Stephanie. My name is Darcy Pruitt. I work for the Regional Water Management Foundation, and I am working on the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, and I work for the Mid-County Groundwater Agency. So my presentation objectives are to tell you a little bit about groundwater, so you have increased understanding about what's going on in the law and what we're doing here locally to protect our groundwater, and what challenges lie ahead, and of course how you can make a difference. So first, what is the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, which everyone in the know calls SGMA? So SGMA is the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. It was signed into law in 2014 and took effect in 2015. And it's the first comprehensive groundwater legislation in California. And California usually leads the way in these things, but we are actually the last of the some say Western arid states to actually regulate groundwater. So we're a little behind the curve in regulating groundwater. Basically, the law has been that if you own property, you could beneficially use the groundwater. And there were supposed to be limitations, but the limitations are pretty hard to follow unless you're actually tracking what you're using and what the recharge is. And that's a pretty complicated equation to figure out if you're just a landowner pumping a well. So the fact is, California wants us to think more about our groundwater because it's such an important resource. And the law requires three main things. It requires local management of groundwater. And I guess maybe we should think about what groundwater is. Most people don't really think about where the water comes from when they turn on the tap. And in Santa Cruz County, we have both surface water and groundwater. The city, who Heidi works for, provides mostly surface water, so water that's stored in the reservoir and comes from local precipitation and is in rivers and creeks. Groundwater, also locally from local precipitation, is what filters down through the soil and into aquifers that store water and that we can pump for beneficial use from the ground. So groundwater is water that's stored under the ground. So now that we know what groundwater is, and now that we know that we're managing it, the law requires us to have a local groundwater sustainability agency, and it's required to be made up of our local water agencies. We have to create a groundwater sustainability plan, and then we have to manage groundwater sustainably and actually reach the definition of sustainability that we set locally by 2040. So we've got 20 years from the time that we submit our plan to be sustainable. So who is the MGA? So the MGA members, like I mentioned a little bit, are the local water agencies. So anybody who either provides water or manages water or permits water. And for us, in our mid-county, and actually let's show the next slide. So the dark blue double line, that's our basin, and it's both described jurisdictionally, but it's also represents all the areas that we receive groundwater from. So it's both a scientific designation and a jurisdictional designation. So within there, we've got the service areas shown from part of the city of Santa Cruz, all of Soquel Creek Water District, Central Water District, and then it also covers the unincorporated portions of the county that aren't covered by municipal water districts, where private wells pump and small water systems pump. And those people are represented by the county. So the county is one of our members, the city of Santa Cruz is a member, Soquel Creek Water District is a member, and Central Water District is a member. And then we've done something very unique in our basin. We actually have 3 representatives of private wells on our board so that they're participating in making decisions about how we manage groundwater. And that's actually pretty unique in most of the state. Most of the state is just the water agencies, but in this county, the decision was made that we should really have private well representatives as well. So, what are our groundwater sustainability challenges, and why should you care? So this is a slide that shows California and how much water supply comes from surface water versus groundwater in different areas of the state. So why should we care about groundwater? First, the state has mandated the fact that we need to care with SGMA. The second is that the Central Coast is really very dependent on groundwater. About 85% of the whole Central Coast region, our water comes from groundwater. That's a much higher percentage than any place else in the state. The next nearest is the Lahontan, which is the other side of the state, and they get about 50%. So we use a lot more groundwater on the Central Coast than anywhere else in the state. And then in Santa Cruz County, we're about 80% dependent on groundwater. So groundwater is really important to us, and the fact that we should have a supply going forward is something that's worth managing too. Yeah, I think so. And then the state says these are our groundwater challenges. So these are the 6 things that we have to manage for that the state says are important. And as you can see, there's groundwater level declines, land subsidence, and that doesn't really happen here, but it happens in other parts of the state like the Central Coast, the Central Valley. Seawater intrusion, groundwater storage, surface water depletion, and then water quality degradation. And I think I'm ready for the next slide. But then our local groundwater challenges aren't as big for all 6 of those factors, but 2 of them are very important, and that's seawater intrusion, surface water depletion. And I think we'll get to seawater intrusion a little bit later, but the fact is it's a serious concern here and something to know worldwide. So we have a little bit of seawater intrusion at both ends of our basin, both at Soquel Point and that down in La Selva. So we've already got documented seawater intrusion into our freshwater supply. But 70% of coastal aquifers worldwide have been infiltrated by seawater. So it's really a significant challenge worldwide, and it's something that's important for us here. And the problem is that once you get salt water into your freshwater supply, you can't use the water supply without significant investment in treatment options. So it's important that we control seawater intrusion and protect our water supply. And then something else to think about is we know that we're expecting the climate to get warmer, and we're not quite sure how climate change is going to affect water supply, but these are complicated issues, and we need to prepare for that and how it will affect our water supply and water supply reliability. So a lot of people think that population is the problem, and I just wanted to show this slide from the county as a whole, and the green line represents water service connections and population. So you can see the green line is going up, but the red line represents our water use, and you see how we've had increasing population, but with better conservation, we're actually using a lot less water than we used to, even though we're much more populated. I think I'm ready for the next slide. So what is the MGA doing to address the challenges? So we're made up of the water agencies in the area, but the MGA is a regional water agency, a regional water management agency that's meant to plan for water supply reliability in the future, basically managing our groundwater. And I think I'm ready for the next slide. The thing that we've really been able to add is looking at the problem from a regional perspective, and we've done some really cool science to figure out where our groundwater freshwater interface is. We supported a helicopter-supported survey to do some fancy geotechnical work that allowed us to figure out exactly off the coast where we didn't have data where the saltwater freshwater interface is. So basically gave us an idea of how long we have to plan and where seawater intrusion is and as it threatens our freshwater. The next slide. So you can see along the coast here, this is basically the MGA basin and on towards Santa Cruz. And all of the orange in the map shows where seawater intrusion is in our aquifers below the level of the seafloor. And it's basically, we don't have seawater intrusion in our coastal monitoring wells at those locations, except at Soquel Point and down in La Selva. But all the way along the coast, you see those yellow and orange. The seawater is right at our freshwater interface, right at the coast. So we really need to be careful. And that's information we didn't have before flying that survey. The other thing that we're doing is we have our partner agencies are all looking at their individual service areas within our basin, and we're trying to look at the basin as a whole and really understand how water supply and what our needs are for protecting the groundwater. So we've developed a watershed model that is very complicated, and this sort of is a simplified diagram to show you the inputs from precipitation and outflows through surface water to the ocean, evapotranspiration with the sun and other things. But basically the model allows us to both calibrate to the past, so take the data that we have, and we have a lot of data, to understand what's happened in the past, but then predict what's going to happen in the future based on future climate and projects that we might need to achieve sustainability. And that allows us to look at our partner agencies' proposed projects from a sort of a, comparing apples to apples instead of comparing apples to oranges, and lets us really evaluate for our plan what's likely to happen in the future. And it gives us the ability to see what different scenarios might help us get to sustainability. And one of the things that we did was we took all that data that we got from the helicopter survey and we ran it through the model to figure out future risk. And if you notice, we've got some big dots and then some smaller dots. And where the dots are bigger, the colors represent different layers of our aquifer. But where the dots are bigger, that's where our risks are higher related to having seawater intrusion in the future. So we're basically collecting scientific data and evaluating it in a way that allows us to plan for the future. And so we're doing a lot of planning right now, and we're doing community outreach. And the groundwater sustainability that we're planning, we've been having meetings for about 1.5 years now with our representatives of our basin water users. And we're preparing a plan called a Groundwater Sustainability Plan, and we call it a GSP because we all need acronyms in our lives. And the things that are in, of course, we have an introduction, we tell everybody who we are, we tell them what we've been doing in the basin to understand groundwater. So that's our plan area and basin setting. Then we talk about the sustainable management criteria. So those 6 things the state tells us we need to manage for: seawater intrusion, groundwater depletion, surface water depletion, all the things that are in the plan. We have to set what our goals are and how we're going to achieve them, and that's with projects and management actions to achieve sustainability. And the reason I highlighted that is because the plans and management actions, so projects and management actions, are the things that both Heidi and Melanie are going to be talking about with you. But I wanted to let you know that the science that we've developed at the MGA with our model, with some of the surveys that we've done, allows us to evaluate the projects that they're presenting to you in a way that allows us to really use the information that they've developed in a scientific way as it comes into our plan. And then, ready for the next one. And then how can you make a difference? Water's precious. We've done a lot with conservation here. And in some ways that's wonderful. We use a lot less water than we used to. You saw that population and water use chart. That's a great thing. But one of the things to think about is we've done such a good job with conservation, we probably can't conserve our way out of protecting our groundwater in terms of climate change going forward, at least based on what our model's telling us we're going to need to do. So we're going to need to have projects. I think it's important that you're open to change, that you participate in the planning process, and I'm going to have a schedule at the last part of the presentation. Learn about projects and support a variety of projects. One of the things that I first read when I took this job was the state's water available for recharge, which is how we take the water that we have and get it into the groundwater so that it's going to be useful for us in the future. And they basically said, we looked at all the water that we have and all the water that we're going to need, and the equation doesn't balance, and we need everything. So I think that's important to know on a state level. And since all of our water here is locally derived from precipitation, we really need to make the best use of the water that we have and use it to both protect our environment and to support the people who live here. So learn about the projects and support projects that we'll need to be sustainable. Talk with your friends, convince them to learn about the issue. And then make sure that you realize that water supply reliability and climate change are real things, and they're very complicated, and we can't afford to get it wrong. So thank you so much. If you need to contact me, my contact information is here. But I work at the Community Foundation, and my address is dpruitt@cfscc.org. And then the last slide, one last slide, is sort of our project going forward with preparing the plan. So we've been working for about 2.5 years, both figuring out how we're going to plan and then putting together our Groundwater Sustainability Planning Advisory Committee. They've been working we're coming up to our 20th meeting, and they meet about once a month. May and June, we're going to be doing some website updates and sending out postcards and doing a survey. We'll have 2 more GSP Advisory Committee meetings then. We're presenting the draft GSP in the board packet to the MGA on July 12th, if it was June. And hopefully we'll be on target, and then we'll have some open houses in July. And then we'll have a comment period. So keep an eye out for that. And if you need any information, be sure to come up to me and I'll have cards. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Heidi Luckenbach. I'm the Deputy Director of Engineering for the City of Santa Cruz Water Department. I decided I'm going to sit here because I like to point at my presentation to hopefully facilitate some understanding, so bear with me. I've been with the city for about 20 years, and I've worked in water engineering the entire time. So during that time, I've had a lot of opportunity to work on a lot of really interesting projects. I think when I first started there, I thought it's quite a small agency, relatively speaking, but the projects are quite big, including water supply planning. So for the past maybe 10 years, I've been working with our local regional agencies on water supply planning projects in addition to just the city. So today I'm going to talk about an introduction to the City of Santa Cruz. I'm not sure how many folks out here are in the City of Santa Cruz service area, so I'll give a little introduction to that. Talk about our water challenges, which are a little bit different than those being experienced by Soquel Creek Water District, as you'll hear from Melanie. But we certainly have opportunities to work together and have regional solutions, as you'll see. And then I'm just going to talk about two of the approaches that the city is currently taking to solve our water supply problems. So first, this is an overview of our service area. We have about a 20 square mile service area. We serve a population. I'll talk even louder. We serve a population of about 90,000 people. We serve outside of the city of Santa Cruz city limits as well. We serve to 41st Avenue. And contrary to Soquel Creek Water District, the City of Santa Cruz is between 190% surface water. So during the winter months, we're entirely surface water. And then in the summer, we have a small portion of groundwater that we use, sharing one of the same basins with Soquel Creek. So we have streams on the north coast. As I'm showing here, we have about 25-30% of our water supply comes from our north coast streams up near south of Davenport. We have Laguna, Majors, Lydell, and Reggiardo, if you've ever heard of those. The infrastructure up there dates back to the 1800s, so it's quite old, and I'll talk in a minute about the implications of that to us now. We also have an intake on the San Lorenzo River up in the Costco area. That was put in the 1970s, and we receive maybe 50% of our water from that flowing source. We have Loch Lomond Reservoir. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to go up there. We have a recreational center up there as well. We take about 17% of our water from there. That's our only storage. So Darcy described groundwater, which is a kind of supply storage. This is for the city, our storage. It's an above ground storage facility. And then finally, we have 4 wells right now in a basin that we share with Soquel Creek Water District. 3 of them are in the Live Oak area, and 1 is up in the Research Drive area over by Pet Pals. That's our most recent one. Our most recent infrastructure is this Belts 12, we call it, in the Research Park area. It's from 2015. Earlier than that was the 1970s, and again, prior to that was the late 1800s. So we have a wide range of age infrastructure. So what are our challenges? Darcy brought up population, and I have a slide I want to share with you because it just kind of conveys the fact that population is not, in fact, our problem. I think it's not with water, perhaps with traffic and housing and jobs, but from a water supply perspective, the increase in population is not our problem. Aging infrastructure is our problem. Again, dating back to the 1800s, it creates, and the life expectancy of a lot of supply infrastructure is about 50 years, and we all know that after 50 years we all require a lot more maintenance and care and feeding, and so a large majority of our infrastructure is at that time frame where it's requiring more care and feeding. Unsustainable groundwater pumping, I'm not going to talk about that. I know Melanie's going to talk more about that, and Darcy certainly had. And then the two external drivers I do want to focus a little bit on are the issues with regards to endangered species and climate change. So this is a very busy graph, but I just wanted to point out and reiterate something that Darcy said. Is this going to work? There we go. And I hope you can see my cursor here. So I started in about this time frame here in the mid-1990s when the population was about 86,000. You can see this up here. And our annual production was, this is 4.5 billion gallons a year. And so come to today where our population is about 10,000 more in our service area, and our demand has dropped from the 4.5 to the about 2.7 billion gallons a year. So we've done a tremendous job. Both agencies, all agencies in this area, have done really a tremendous job in conserving and reducing demand on a per capita basis. Some of the issues with this, however, are, like I said, we have old infrastructure. We have the same infrastructure from when I started, and certainly from the 1970s. And we have a much reduced demand, and reduced demand means that we're not selling the product that we create. And what happens then is you have a lot less revenue in order to feed back into your system, both that aging infrastructure, but this new supply projects that we're trying to acquire and needing to acquire, because we have these external drivers that are reducing the amount of water in our creeks and making it more challenging to rely on the water that's in our creeks. So as good as this looks in terms of a demand perspective, and as good as we're doing and conserving, it has ripple effects throughout the functioning of our agency, for sure. So just the two topics that I wanted to talk about are fish requirements and, again, climate change. I'm not a fish scientist. We're fortunate at the city to have a lot of folks that are fisheries scientists, and in Santa Cruz County, for sure, we have a lot of experts in that field, and we utilize them a lot. What I'm showing here is we have listed species, coho and steelhead, in all of our flowing sources, and we've been working with state and federal regulatory agencies to operate the water system in a way that allows the fish to exist and potentially to thrive. So we've been in this negotiating process for about the last 15 years with regulatory agencies. And what that has resulted in is every month, for every flowing source, there is a certain amount of water that we have to leave in our sources before we can take any water out. And I have an example here, and I wish I could have made it way more simpler, and I should have, so bear with me. The slide on the left here, this is June, and this is just the San Lorenzo River. And so for simplicity, these two bars here are what the amount of water we have to leave in the river if the water year in total was dry or very dry. So no matter what we have to leave, this is 5 million gallons a day. And I don't know if I did mention, the city's average daily demand is between about 4 MGD and about 13 MGD, depending upon the time of year. So in the San Lorenzo River, we have to leave, sorry, I can't find my mouse, 5 MGD if the year is dry or very dry, and about 11 MGD up here if it's normal or wet. So over here these are years, various years from, I think, 2012, it's quite small for here, 2012 to 2017. So just as an example, just to make this as simple as I can, let's use this first bar, which says that in June, the city of Santa Cruz needs to produce 10 MGD for its customers. Now, if that's a dry year, we have to leave 5 MGD in the river. So if it's June and there's 8 MGD in the river, we can take 3 to meet that demand. If it's June and there's 4 MGD in the river, which is not uncommon, we don't get anything from the San Lorenzo River. So then we have to go to our north coast streams, which have the same and similar set of rules. And if there's none there, we have to go to Loch Lomond with similar rules. And if there's none there, there's never none in all of them. I don't want to impart that idea. There's always a little bit. Ultimately, July, August, September, we're having to go to groundwater as well, which is why we have 4 wells in the mid-county basin. Because in every year, we get to a point, sometimes at the beginning of summer, sometimes not until the end of summer, where we are relying on groundwater in order to fill that gap that we have. So the fish requirements, very important for us to be doing this, creating an operational constraint for the city. I have to say, every Tuesday I get an email from our fisheries people that tells us how much water is in each of our flowing sources, how much our demand is, and therefore how much our operators can take out of each source. And every Tuesday they go through this exercise of kind of divvying up the water between the fish and the people. So it's making our operations much more complicated. So that's the fish issue and its constraints on our water supply. The next one, equally as complicated, I think, and I'm not a climate scientist either. We have a lot of people at the local and state level working on climate science. And what I'm showing here is where climate change might take us. So in this graphic, the center point here is where we are now. This is kind of the status quo. Where we could end up, or if anywhere along the state, is it could be wet and cooler over here. It could be wet and warmer. It could be dry and warmer, or it could be dry and cooler. So there's a wide variety of places where climate could take us. And from an agency with flowing sources, it has a very quick and immediate impact on us. If it's very wet, if it's very dry, if all of your rain comes in 1 month versus over a period of 8 months, we see that change immediately. The problem is we don't actually know where we're going in the planning horizon of 10 or 20 years. So we're working with a lot of state and national experts in the field. This data came out of the state climate groups that are looking at global climate models and trying to understand and localize climate change. And I'm showing this because this is the kind of data that we're grappling with right now. And as you can see, it's showing, this is I think a 40-year time horizon across the bottom. And it's showing everything between it's going to be very wet or it's going to be very dry and everything in between, and we don't actually really know. And so what we are doing is working with people to say, well, taking this data, where do we think we're going to end up? And then let's put some kind of buffer around that to hedge our bets if we're wrong. Because looking at this data, I'm kind of guaranteeing myself that I'm going to be wrong because it's so variable. So we're trying to pick a reasonable outcome, and then kind of if you're a little bit wetter, drier, warmer, cooler, give us some sense that we're going to develop water supply projects that will put us in a good place. And so what they've come up with is, this is the same graphic, this is this graphic basically. Oops. It's just saying that for this region, we're going to be about the same in terms of temperature. We'll probably be a little bit drier, so we'll be over in this area drier, and we'll be a little bit warmer. So we know that somewhere between now and 40 years, we're going to be drier and we're going to be warmer, and we're going to try to plan for that. And that's very complicated because we don't know when the impact of that's going to happen. We don't know how long the impact of that is going to occur. It could be happening now. Somebody asked me recently, are we experiencing this now because it's been dry over the last couple of years? I don't know. So the city's strategy is to develop projects, and I'll talk about that in a minute, that can meet the immediate need, but then also be flexible so that should it be warmer, should it be wetter, we can adapt as we go. This one I know is quite small, but this is kind of interpreting the data from the previous slide, which is to say that it's going to get drier. We know if we used to have 1 dry year out of 100, now we're going to have 2 in Northern California. If it used to be wetter 4 years out of 100, now it's going to be wetter 10 years out of 100, which sounds like really positive, except what we're seeing too is that it's wetter, but it's occurring in a very short period of time. And so if it's doing that, you have to have a place to put the water. So someplace like Loch Lomond or a groundwater basin or something. So we know things are going to be different in the future, and we're trying to figure out how to plan for that. So how do we plan for that? We developed in 2013 and 14, we developed what we call the Water Supply Advisory Committee for the City of Santa Cruz. It consisted of this group of people trying to capture a diverse sense of opinions and thoughts about water supply management, demand management, and supply planning. They met for 2 years, and this was their final problem statement. We have limited storage, which, like I just said, if it's going to rain in a very short period of time, we want a place to be able to put that water. We have limited storage. They recognize that we have the fish flow requirements that we have to meet, and we have climate change that we have to figure out how to grapple with and deal with. The peak season gap. So when we have a drought, if anybody was here during the 1976, 77, or the early 80s time frame, if we have a drought that looks like that in the future, we'll have a 1.2 billion gallon per year deficit of water, and that's about half of our demand. So we would be half short in serving our customers. And then finally, they recognize that water conservation is not enough. The graph I showed you previously that showed that dip in demand, that is demand hardening through conservation projects and programs, which are ongoing, but there's just nothing more really to squeeze out. So but still we will continue to pursue our conservation programs. We're looking at water transfers with our neighboring agencies, which include Soquel Creek Water District, and to the north of us, Scotts Valley and the San Lorenzo Valley. And then we're looking at aquifer storage and recovery, and as a longer term strategy for the city anyway, is recycled water and desalination. So we're looking at all of these things at the same time. And to that effort, I just want to show you this really quickly. This Darcy showed this slide as well, but it's just to put us kind of in context with the region, because we are fortunate in that we have surface water and groundwater, and we're fortunate that we are adjacent to a number of agencies, so Soquel Creek and Scotts Valley and San Lorenzo Valley. So to the extent that these water sharing strategies work, we are kind of centrally located where we can facilitate that moving of water around. We're doing a pilot right now with Soquel Creek Water District. We started this year where the city is delivering to them a certain amount of water every day through this an intertie on 41st Avenue into the central region surrounded in red. And so it's considered a pilot study because things can go really well and things can go not as well when you do this kind of water transferring. So we're doing that this year, and then we're considering doing it again next year where we would expand that region and potentially deliver more water to them. I think Melanie has a slide that talks a little bit about how that project's going. And we're also doing a pilot where Darcy described how groundwater works in terms of infiltration from rainwater. You can also actively recharge the groundwater basin, which is what we're doing up in the Research Park area in our Belts 12. So we're taking city water and we're injecting it into the ground. So to expedite that groundwater recharge. We are doing that this year. Next year we're going to expand that program, that pilot program, into 2 wells and see how that goes in conjunction with the groundwater modeling that Darcy talked about, to see how it's benefiting, how it would benefit the city from the perspective of water supply, storing that water, but also in terms of groundwater management. What are the benefits of doing that? And then overall, this is our timeline, ongoing conservation programs. Like I said, we have an agreement with Soquel Creek to do the water transfer pilot test for 5 years, and that is good through 2020. So we have a couple more years to do piloting there. And then we're going to be doing pilot testing for the ASR, like I talked about, for at least one other season, if not 2 more, just to see and confirm how well that works. And then we have a schedule to start full-scale implementation, likely starting with ASR wells in 2021. And then that would be ongoing too, because again, one of our objectives is to make sure that the projects that we do implement are adaptable to climate change and demand and things like that. So that it says 2021 to 2023, but implementation of projects is really going to be an ongoing strategy. And I think that's all the material I have. So again, this was really just to like touch the surface of a lot of topics, and when we get to Q&A, we'll look forward to those questions.
Oh, I'm wired. Hold on. Did it go? There's a button.
Okay, and is it mode?
This is the one that's the closest.
Got it. It's on.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay. Good morning. Just in case you guys forgot, because it's been a while since Stephanie did the introductions, my name is Melanie Mow Schumacher. I'm with Soquel Creek Water District. Thank you very much to the League of Women Voters for having us present today. This morning my family went to the movies. They're all excited because the new Avenger movie is out. And I was equally excited to be able to come today and present to this crowd and alongside Heidi and Darcy. These women are rock stars, and it's a great opportunity for us to always come around and share the story of water in Santa Cruz County, and especially mid-county. I've lived here for over 20 years. My bubble is pretty small. I live, work, and play a lot in the mid-county. I live in Soquel. My kids go to school through Soquel Union Elementary School, New Brighton, and now the high school. Work at Soquel Creek Water District. So this is, a great place for me to be able to work and plan for the future. I do just want to say thank you to my board members and the general manager of Soquel Creek Water District for being here. Love the support and the nerves that you bring when I come and present to a group, but I always do really love being able to share our stories. So I'm going to take you on a journey today about Soquel Creek Water District and what we're doing in the mid-county area. So just one slide on, who is Soquel Creek Water District. Sometimes we just Ron says sometimes I just get right to the point, but I want to take a moment to really talk about who is Soquel Creek Water District. We're the local water agency, nonprofit, special district that provides water to about 50,000 customers in Capitola, Soquel, Aptos, Rio Del Mar, Seascape, La Selva Beach. We serve water to 50,000 customers, and businesses, parks, schools. And like you've heard before, all of the water that we generate is from the ground. We have a very active and dedicated staff. We're mighty and pretty small. We have about just shy of 50 employees that make sure that water is delivered 24/7, 365 days of the year. We've been recognized and honored. We were the first special district to receive the Transparency Award. We've received many awards based upon our budget and fiscal responsibility, and we have another award that will be, I think, announced later this summer. So I can't share it now, but again, we're really proud of who we are and what we do. I think the next slide. So, as has been mentioned before, we continue to beat the same story of the groundwater challenges here are dire. With the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act passed in 2014, which, just as a side note, that was passed on September 16th, which is my birthday. So it's something that I will always remember as a day that was really important for all of California, and especially here. So we're one of 21 groundwater basins that have what we call this scarlet letter of being critically overdrafted. Not only are we critically overdrafted because of the seawater intrusion and the groundwater contamination, but we are also considered a high priority basin. Many of you who rely on this water, like me, that is our sole source of supply. So there are other basins that do have this critically overdrafted groundwater basin, but they have other supplies. We do not. We only have groundwater. So next slide. So Soquel Creek Water District has been working very hard on a multifaceted approach. It's called our Community Water Plan. It's our roadmap to long-term water supply and sustainability. This slide here shows you, again, Heidi talked about the Water Supply Advisory Committee that the City of Santa Cruz put together. At that same time, Soquel Creek Water District also went on to do a 13-month process. As many of you were here prior to that, the city and the district had partnered on another water supply alternative project. That project was shelved, and so both agencies really took to developing a robust process. We do recognize that process means a lot to people. Obviously, you know, we're a very democratic society, and so Soquel Creek Water District's 13th month process incorporated community input. We did phone surveys, we did online surveys, we got out to the people, we wanted to hear what was important to them and what their values were. That picture on the bottom right was just one of many community meetings that we held. Next slide. And what was born out of that effort in 2014 was the Community Water Plan. And the Community Water Plan isn't just focused on securing a new supply to address the critical overdraft of the groundwater basin, but it also wanted to recognize, just very similar to the city, the conservation that our customers do and continue to do, as well as proactive groundwater management, with the goals really to make sure that we are protective of further seawater intrusion, that we are planning not just for the water for today, but also for the future, our children and our children's children. And then, of course, you know, we are a community that really wants to embrace and protect our environment. So I have just a couple slides related to a couple of the facets of our Community Water Plan. So conservation is the cornerstone. It should be the cornerstone of every water agency or every water supplier. And we are shining stars to the state in terms of what can be done with conservation. Both the city as well as the district, we're very proud of what our customers can do. Our customers average about 50 gallons per person per day, which is over half or maybe even 60% of the statewide average, which is over 120 gallons per person per day. And that's a lot because of the programs and activities and the emphasis that we put on. Soquel Creek Water District has a lot of rebates that are available. We do have a handout in the back of what kind of rebates are available, from toilets, washing machines, changing out landscaping. The picture on the left is Roy Sykes. He's our water conservation specialist. He provides free house water-wise calls. So if you want to have your house looked at to see what can be saved in terms of additional conservation measures, he will come out and do a custom report for you. We also have integrated some new things. So that picture in the middle is what we call our No-Des machine, and that's an acronym. But really what that is especially during the droughts, in order to maintain our infrastructure, we have to do preventative measures. And one of them is flushing our water mains to keep those pipes clean and safe and for long-term use. And during the times of droughts and during the times when we have customers who literally are saving their water from their shower into a bucket and then watering their plants outside, they're like, why do you guys have all this water running down your streets? And it's because we were doing our maintenance on our pipelines. And so our district has invested in partnerships with others to have a unit that can recirculate and flush the water main so that there is no water wasted. So it goes through that truck, and that's that illustration in the middle. And then, of course, we also want to just reiterate to those who may not know, we do maintain a very active water demand offset program for our developers. And this is where if you build something within the Soquel Creek Water District service area, we calculate the anticipated water footprint of a house or a business, and then we multiply that by 2, and we get how much water we think that they will be using, and then we make the developers offset that use so that there is not just a negative footprint, like a net neutral footprint, but a positive footprint, that they're taking into account what they would do onto the demand of the groundwater basin, and then adding another 100% to make sure that their conservation measures have no impact on the groundwater basin. One thing that separates the district from the city in terms of the way we provide water, Soquel Creek Water District is not a land use agency. So our charge is to provide water. So I know a lot of people ask us, why don't you guys, don't do growth? That's not Soquel Creek Water District's charge. Our charge is to provide water in a very environmentally and protective way. So with conservation, we do groundwater management, and that's our bread and butter. We operate and maintain 15 wells, numerous tanks, and miles of pipe. And our system is spread out. We don't have one centralized system. So, there could be a well site or a tank site right in your neighborhood, and you may not even know it. And so we are able to adaptively manage that to ensure that we are trying to prevent pumping away from the coast while we develop our supplemental water supplies. So I don't have a slide on that, but I did want to recognize that. And then this slide is really focused on the water supply options that we have and are evaluating. So through our community-driven process and through the direction of our board, really how we were going to meet the water shortage needs and the groundwater basin challenge was through keeping all the water supply options on the table. Don't put all of our eggs into one basket. And so from 2014 to current day, we maintain a very diversified water supply options portfolio, including purified recycled water, river water transfers with the City of Santa Cruz, stormwater capture, and we also still have one toe in the desalination world. I'm not going to really spend too much time on the desal project. That's by a private entity in Moss Landing. Their project right now is having some delays due to regulatory issues. So the district this year decided we would continue to watch desal but not actively do anything at this time, and instead focus our efforts again on recycled water, stormwater capture, and surface water. And I have a couple slides on that I want to jump to. But before we switch to the next slide, I wanted to just address, we try not to throw too many numbers into our presentations, but just as a high level, I'm going to put a number out there, which is 1,500 acre feet per year. That's the shortfall that Soquel Creek Water District is trying to fill to meet the needs of our customers and also to address and replenish the groundwater basin. And so as you can see in the slide here, the volume and amounts of water that we are anticipating through these options. So the recycled water is up to 1,500. We feel that one could fulfill the district's needs. River water transfers at this time, we're looking at about up to 300 acre feet per year. That's with the short term, and Heidi and I can field some questions later. And then stormwater capture, those are small in scale, and those we feel that if we pursue those, they can give us about 10 to 100 acre feet per year. So a combination will continue to be the vision of the district. So one slide on the stormwater capture. Stormwater capture is something that we have been partnering with the County of Santa Cruz. We did utilize some technology very similar to the airborne geophysical surveys that were done through the MGA. The same group from Denmark had this kind of ATV pulley system that can measure and detect the geology about 30 feet below ground. So we have been using that. We evaluated that with the county and have identified a couple places within the county that stormwater capture could work. So we'll continue to evaluate that. In terms of river water transfer, this is something that the Soquel Creek Water District and the City of Santa Cruz have been partnering on, again, as Heidi mentioned, since 2015. 2015 to 2020, we have been developing and ongoing a pilot purchase project where the city is providing the district water at a introductory rate for us to evaluate not necessarily the quantity of water but the quality of water. So Heidi's map illustrated below, previously had like a little red boundary area. I am one of those customers that are getting that surface water. I've been getting it since the valve was opened, and I guess I'll be getting it again next year. But that is something that the city is actively trying to work with others and with Soquel Creek Water District to see the viability and the feasibility from water quality, cost, and then ultimately the quantity. The project right now is limited due to the short-term pilot evaluation of taking water right now that is from the North Coast sources from the city, which doesn't have water rights issues. So if there is a project that were to be larger, there are other issues that the city and the district would need to evaluate. The second point here on river water transfers is that we are still looking at a long-term option. The city is still underway. Their evaluation process, like Heidi mentioned, is through the end of 2020, and then they're going to evaluate and basically kind of create and describe what a project would be and what kind of water then would be available to the neighboring agencies such as Soquel Creek Water District and Scotts Valley. The slide right here, I mentioned on that slide previously, a lot of people ask us, a lot of people come to our meetings. We have our board meetings here, and probably every board meeting we have somebody that comes and asks us, why aren't you doing more with river water? Why aren't you guys doing more getting water from the city? And again, I'm very fortunate today to be able to sit alongside Heidi, who can help answer those questions. We are working with them, and we are basing what water is available that we can do our planning and our policy based on what they can provide to us. So we are working with them, we're looking to them, but at a recent meeting on April 1st, the City of Santa Cruz had a joint water commission and a water supply advisory committee meeting, and they presented the most recent information to date. And in that, there was a statement that was done. I actually printed it out, let me quote it. From Rosemary Menard, she's the Santa Cruz Water Director, and through the new modeling efforts that they've been doing with Gary Fisk and with their groundwater modeling, there's not enough water to meet the city and Soquel Creek Water District's needs. And I want to read a quote from Rosemary. There's not enough surface water to reliably meet both the City of Santa Cruz's needs and the needs that Soquel Creek has to protect the aquifer in their service area from seawater intrusion. So that is why Soquel Creek Water District at this time is still evaluating and considering other supply options rather than putting all of our eggs in one basket, which would be water transfers. This is another slide, and this was actually taken from that meeting that showed numerically, what does that mean? So it's kind of got a lot of numbers, but really what this shows you is that based upon different climate change models, which are all the acronyms on the left, and then in the middle section you're seeing the current situation of the Graham Hill treatment plant and the future improvements of the Graham Hill treatment plant. So that's what the city would need to do to increase their water supplies. And then all of those percentages in there is showing whether or not the city could provide water either at the 1,500 acre feet per year is the one column, 500 acre feet per year is another column, and 300 acre feet. And through those you can see on a percentage-wise basis the reliability that we could count on for that water. And reliability is very important to Soquel Creek Water District customers, the values that they wanted. They want a water supply project, and they want water sustainability that is reliable and of high quality and timely. And as Heidi mentioned, their challenges alone on terms of their surface water is how much water goes to fish and how much water goes to their community. When we or others get added on to their portfolio, it's water for the City of Santa Cruz, water for the fish, water for Soquel Creek Water District and water for our groundwater basin. And so there is, and I think there was kind of a pecking order that would have to be identified, and I think that was part of their presentation, that we have to always consider when we're looking about mid-county issues. So my next slides, and probably the remainder of the slides, are really going to focus on the Pure Water Soquel Project that Soquel Creek Water District has been embarking on. The Pure Water Soquel Project is a recycled water project, and this illustration is just to kind of set the background of recycled water. Recycled water has been utilized in California for quite some time. The picture on the left is actually from Orange County Water District. They had a facility that they brought online in the 1970s called Water Factory 21. They've improved it, increased it, enhanced it, and now their project is called the Groundwater Replenishment System, and they generate water. They just hit over 280 billion gallons of water is recycled, purified, and put back into the ground. If anybody has anybody ever been to Disneyland? Disneyland does this sort of, they're very proud. You can go on their website, and on their website it says that they are proud that 100% of the water in their area is recycled. It goes through this process. Groundwater wells pull up the water. It's used in the community of Orange County, Disneyland. The water then goes into the wastewater treatment plant. It's treated, it's purified, it goes out into their seawater intrusion barrier groundwater wells, and then that cycle goes on and on. And so that is what kind of is the model that many of us in California are looking at to expand water supplies. The map on the right just shows where water recycling is being identified or is being put in place in California. Next slide. So the Pure Water Soquel Project, this is a graphic that illustrates what is the project and what would it do. So currently about 8 million gallons a day is collected through the city of Santa Cruz and the unincorporated areas of Santa Cruz County through our wastewater or our sewer systems. And that water goes out to the wastewater treatment facility over in Neary Lagoon. And that water is treated to secondary standards. And this is a bottle of secondary water right here. So about 8 million gallons a day goes out into the ocean. And our project is proposing to capture about 2 million gallons a day of that, or about 25%, and do some treatment over at the Santa Cruz wastewater treatment plant that then would be used for 3 ways of tertiary level. And this is tertiary level here. This would be used, continue to be used as in-plant needs so that they don't have to use potable water. It would also it's also being proposed to irrigate a nearby park at La Barranca Park, and it would also be utilized for a future fill station, very similar to those in the Bay Area where construction water trucks can go and fill their tanks up for water that's used for dust control, and even perhaps a program where neighbors could go and fill up their tanks or their buckets if they wanted to use recycled water for their home irrigation. That's about 18% of the 2 million gallons that would be created. The rest would go to a mid-county facility, a water purification facility that Soquel Creek Water District has identified that we're going to be developing and doing some preliminary design at the Chanticleer site, Chanticleer and Soquel Avenue. It's midway between the city and the district service area, and that water then would be purified. It would go through reverse osmosis and UV light to purify the water. This is the water that is generated through the Orange County facility. That water would be treated there, and then it would go out through a series of pipes to 3 potential injection wells or recharge well areas that we've identified in the Mid-County area, one at Willowbrook Lane, one at Monterey Avenue, and one at Cabrillo College Drive. Our hydrologists have identified that as a critical area for us to create a seawater intrusion barrier that would help prevent that seawater from moving further inland, and it would allow us to then optimize and maximize our pumping of existing groundwater wells so that we can help fully meet and maintain sustainability as well as address the goals of the groundwater sustainability plan. This project, we are actively working with the City of Santa Cruz, the County of Santa Cruz, and in collaboration with the City of Capitola. Next slide. I talked briefly about the values of our customers, and our customers really value the environment. And we feel that Pure Water Soquel Project is a very, very environmentally friendly project. We obviously are going to be reducing water that goes out to the Monterey Bay National Sanctuary. We're also planning on running this project on green energy. Now with the dream of that Ginny Johnson first created here, and she created the Monterey Bay Community Choice Power. The project is going to be powered through green energy. We also want to make sure that we are providing water for our customers and children that are clean. And when we did our initial surveys on support or interest in recycled water, we realized that most of our customers, when they understood how the process would be, where we would take the recycled water, purify it, put it back into the ground, we had 77% support on this type of a project. So we really do feel that what we're doing is meeting and addressing a lot of the things that our customers wanted. Again, this is just a nod, and again to illustrate, that the Santa Cruz County is about reusing and recycling and reducing. We were passing lots of local regulations about not using disposable bags, reusing bags, plates, napkins, and water. Water is, ranked probably number one in terms of natural resources. So with Pure Water Soquel Project, we would be expanding the amount of recycled water that is created from the Santa Cruz wastewater treatment plant. Currently, 60 million gallons per year is for in-plant use, and that's about all that facility does. We would be expanding that to over 700 million gallons a year of recycled water. Now, what could a facility look like? Our project efforts have moved along in a way that we're able to describe what a project is, where it could be located, and of course how much it costs. We're a little bit further along than some of Santa Cruz's project planning, but what a facility could look like. Those pictures on the left are existing facilities. The top one is in Washington, the bottom one is in Pleasanton. We will be working on developing a site that complements existing communities, and just in terms of size and scale, the picture on the right is a facility that we toured. It was a pilot plant. San Diego has a pilot plant the size of our full-scale facility, and so that's the size and the amount of racks to treat 1 million gallons a day, which is about what our project size would be. So it's not huge, it's not big and scary in a community. It's not that big. Okay, next slide. And one of the things I think people think about when they hear, you guys are doing recycled water, I think, as I mentioned before, we've got a lot of support in terms of people saying, this needs to be done. There is only a finite amount of water, and we need to manage it and reuse it and take care of our water system. And there's still a lot of people who are concerned about the water. They may not necessarily want to judge water by the end product, which is purified. Water would be purified. They still are concerned about where the water came from. And so Soquel Creek Water District Board asked staff to have a third-party evaluation, really evaluate the water that would be generated from Santa Cruz wastewater treatment plant and treated through this industry-proven technology, and is that water safe? And so the National Water Research Institute came and evaluated our project, evaluated our planning efforts. We had meetings here, videotaped, and they're online. And their conclusion was, and this is the article from the bottom right, the headline says, National Expert Panel gives Soquel Creek Water District Recycled Water Plan thumbs up. And the panel was comprised of academics, professors from Cal Berkeley, Arizona, water regulators, and industry leaders. And their conclusion was that the project is plausible, feasible, and protective of public health with respect to the following elements: quality of the source water that could be provided, using proven advanced treatment technologies, and that it would meet all drinking water requirements that is protective of public health and the environment. So I want to quote that because that's not my quote, that was their quote. Next slide. And then I have just a couple slides related to finance and key milestones of the project. We did conduct an economic impact study. This was done by Dr. Brent Haddad from UCSC and one of his doctorate students to evaluate the economic benefits of the Pure Water Soquel Project. And through his analysis, the project would provide over $900 million in benefits based upon the residential benefits, the benefits we can provide for reliable water supply to businesses, as well as the environmental benefits. He also calculated and quantified that without the project, we would have, less homes. We would we would also have a big hit on our water rates, and this is the illustration on the right, that without reliable water supply, we basically would probably have to sell less water. And that curtailment, at that point, if we did a no project evaluation, it would be that we would have about 30 gallons per person per day to sell to people. That's the amount of water that we're trying to do, is that 1,500. And our water rates would then go up by about threefold. So that was really important for us to kind of understand that project or no project economic analysis. And then the next slide, Darcy. The key milestones thus far for our project is that we have received quite a bit of funding for our planning efforts. The State Water Resources Control Board and the Federal U.S. Bureau of Reclamation have invested over $2 million in our planning and analysis of the Pure Water Soquel Project. We also were very happy that we were invited back for a Prop 1 groundwater grant program. We applied for this, and then the state invited people to supply a full application. And that grant bucket is for an up to $50 million grant. So that grant is specific to projects that can prevent seawater intrusion and other kind of contamination. So we are excited, and our fingers are crossed that we hope to hear if we were awarded sometime this summer. We also still are also actively always evaluating other grant and low interest loan programs. Soquel Creek Water District just completed a 2-year process. We did have our whole project go through environmental analysis and environmental review. In December of 2018, the project was certified as complete, and the project was approved. And we are currently going through initial design and permitting. As I mentioned before, I did want to mention costs. So our project costs are estimated to be about $90 million, and that's projected out to construction costs. So that's out to 2022. Originally, our estimates when we were first looking at the project in 2017, it had a price tag of about $60 to $65 million. With inflation the way it is, we do have to factor a 5% inflation rate. And so every year that goes out in terms of the project, you have to add that to your costs. And so we felt that 5% was a pretty good estimate, although we were just heard from a recent library presentation, the Capitola Library. They were quoting, I think it was a 12% inflation factor. So timing is an issue, not just for protection of our groundwater basin, but also in terms of project costs. With the potential of acquiring grants and low interest loans, we are hoping to reduce the project cost by half, and that is something that is very important to our ratepayers and to the district. And our proposed timeline, as you can see, since 2015 is when we initiated, evaluated, and pursuing the Pure Water Soquel Project. We do still have the goal of bringing the project online in 2022 with the goal to replenish the groundwater basin by 2040. Darcy did present and talk about the SkyTEM evaluation. That's that aerial geophysical study that we did with Denmark, where we flew that helicopter along the coast, and it gave us the new information not just the seawater intrusion occurring at both ends of the district, but it's occurring all along the coastline. This is, I want to close really with this last quote. This is from Cameron Tana, who is the groundwater hydrologist that is helping the district and the GSA. The close proximity of the interface also provides a reason to set a goal to recover the groundwater levels sooner than the 2040 deadline to achieve sustainability required by the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. So I think that data that we received with that SkyTEM evaluation in 24 not only confirmed that groundwater challenges were apparent at both ends, but along the entire coastline, and gave us really the kind of confirmation that we need, that we need to continue on this path of basin sustainability. And I think that might be my last slide. Oh, one last, just to recognize, Soquel Creek Water District does a lot of outreach and education. This is just a snapshot of some of the activities or events that we've had. We have an award-winning, nationally recognized trailer called the Pure Water Soquel Educational Trailer that we tour around our community. And we're welcome to come to any kind of event, school function. That's down on the bottom right. And then the picture on the top left is our learning center. We do have a learning center at Soquel Creek Water District. It was funded through a Bureau of Reclamation grant, and we invite people to come and learn more about what we're doing. So I think with that, that's it. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Barbara Lewis. I'm the president of the League of Women Voters. And I would like to thank Melanie and Heidi and Darcy for excellent presentations. We probably have more information than we can possibly absorb. But I think that this was a very worthwhile look at possible solutions to problems of the mid-county water situation. And I would like to now thank Stephanie Harlan, our program chair, who's collecting questions. She has put a great deal of time and effort into organizing this program. And I think we were all know something that we didn't know before we came. Now we are going to the question and answer part of the program. Our voter service chair, Dorothy Fry, will be handling the questions. And I will just turn this over. Okay?
Does this microphone work?
Okay.
Yes. Okay. There are a number of questions that are in the same category, so I'm trying to group them that way. This is aimed at Soquel Creek Water District. It says the 2015 District Urban Water Management Plan stated that no supply alternative within the basin other than existing infrastructure will be included, end quote. Here's the question. Why is the district going into such deep debt now and raising rates annually for the next 5 years when it does not support the 2015 Urban Water Management Plan?
The Urban Water Management Plan, just for those of you who may not know, is a state mandate for all water agencies to create. These are long-term plans where we have to project out our existing conditions of our sources, how much water we have, how much water is needed, and it also includes provisions related to drought contingency. In terms of the question, which is why, can you repeat that again?
Question. Why is the district going into such deep debt now and raising rates annually for the next 5 years when it does not support the 2015 Urban Water Management Plan?
Okay, thank you. So let me just clarify. The community water plan, including the Pure Water Soquel Project, water transfers, is included in our Urban Water Management Plan. So maybe if whoever wrote that question can come up to me at the end, I can go through that document with you. We did identify a shortfall. We did identify that we are in a groundwater emergency. We have some overdraft conditions, and there was a shortfall and a gap identified that would need to be fulfilled with new water supplies. In terms of our water rates, we have always been very fiscally minded. The Soquel Creek Water District generated a previous finance plan that was a 10-year projection identifying anticipated costs for existing operations, new infrastructure, and water supply. And then we just went through a new finance plan and a new rate setting, and that would be for any water supply project as the city does. So we are taking on some rate increases. I'm a customer, and that is because, and it was passed by, very minimal I think complaints from our customers. It passed very well because I think people realize that it's an investment that needs to be done.
This is for the Santa Cruz Water Department. Has the Santa Cruz Water Department determined if they have enough extra surface water to provide Soquel Creek Water District in Mid-County to solve the groundwater shortage issue?
No. The short answer being no. Like Melanie said, we're still in the planning phases of determining which projects, the INLU, the ASR, INLU being water transfers or water exchanges, aquifer storage and recovery, and for the city, as well as collaborating with regional agencies. So how can we solve both the city's problems, and can we solve neighboring agencies' problems as well? We have a number of constraints that we're working through, one being water rights. Melanie mentioned that our current pilot project is limited to 300 acre-feet per year, and that's because we only have water rights. Some of our water sources have water rights that we can share and some don't. So we're working with the state right now to reconcile that, to allow us more flexibility in terms of where we can put our water. And water rights are constrained both by the volume, time of year, where you can put it, and both in terms of agencies, but also where you can put it in terms of either to a customer or in the ground. Those are all water right constraints that we're working through right now. Another issue I think that, and Melanie brought this up too, is she called it a pecking order, we call it a priority of use. So for the city of Santa Cruz, our priorities are fisheries, city customers, sustainability, and regional partners. So these are all their priority of use that you have to consider when you are thinking about where you're going to put your water. And if our surface water reliability begins to decrease because of whatever, climate change, and the district is requiring a certain amount of guaranteed water, thank you, they need to know that they have guaranteed water to provide to their customers. So the short answer is no, in that we don't know that yet, but those are all things that we're taking into consideration as we continue to analyze how much water we can have for our customers, for the fish, and then for neighboring agencies.
They say the city, so I'm assuming they mean Santa Cruz City. The city has stated its intent to bring about more cooperative water rights, whereby each water district in the middle half of the county would become an eligible place of use of each other's water. What are, number one, the earliest, and number two, the most likely dates when this sharing of water rights might be achieved?
So we call it the Santa Cruz Water Right Project, and we are currently in the environmental impact report development phase. We're developing a document, an EIR, that looks at all of the environmental issues related to our potential use of our water rights in different ways, sharing with other agencies, putting in the ground, and things like that. We started that in November of 2019 and of 18. Thank you. We hope to get the process is that you issue a draft of this document for public review and comment, which we're hoping to do in the fall. And then, so this time next year, in 2020, we hope to finalize the EIR for the Santa Cruz Water Rights Project, Beyond that, we're still in negotiations with the state because they will use that document in their considerations for approving our water right applications. We have our water right applications into the state, but it's just the process of getting them all the documents they need. So the earliest, I think was the first question, is probably the end of 2020. And I forgot how that differed from the second question.
The first one was number one was the earliest, and number two, the most likely dates. So.
Well, those are interesting distinctions, because I would say the earliest is 2020, the end of 2020. The most likely, so I mentioned earlier, the city's been negotiating water in our flowing sources with state agencies for almost 20 years now. So we have a timeline and a schedule that we are diligently pursuing to meet the 2020 goal. To answer some of the regional questions that we have, but from a practical standpoint, again, we've been negotiating with state on other issues for almost 20 years. So
2 to 20 years.
Somewhere between 2 and 20 years.
I have a number of questions on Pure Water Soquel, so I'll start with one and continue. Why is Soquel Creek Water District rushing forward on Pure Water Soquel and not waiting until the city makes project determinations in 2020 for partnership?
Great, thank you. I'm hoping that today's presentation has helped people understand the situation of our groundwater basin and the seawater contamination that is occurring. And that is probably the number one driver of why not sit and wait. It's the environment, and it's the protection of natural resources, and it's protection of being able to give water to our customers that's safe to drink. In terms of waiting for the city for their efforts, I feel like I want to, speak for our district, our board. We are still continuing to partner on water transfers. That is not going away by what we're doing today and tomorrow and next month on Pure Water Soquel. Heidi just talked about the complexities of the pecking order or the priority of use issues. They're complex, and so we continue to move forward to protect the groundwater basin, to try and advance a project that is affordable and economical in terms of rising costs and inflation. And somewhere between 2 and X number of years, when the city is ready with their water transfer option, we will want to evaluate that. But until then, the district needs to continue their prudent planning of addressing not only our district's needs, but also through the state mandate of the Groundwater Sustainability Act.
Why inject the treated water, and they call it risky treated water, rather than use it for irrigation at, say, Cabrillo College or Seascape or county parks golf course, or Seascape Golf Course or county parks? Why not use it for irrigation?
There is the opportunity for recycled water to be used for other uses besides for groundwater replenishment. As I mentioned before in the previous slide, the recycled water would be used to irrigate a park in Santa Cruz. For the district's need, again, it's about protection of our water supply from seawater intrusion. And irrigation of parks or irrigation of things at that manner. One, the geology of the groundwater basin. We need to see if it makes sense to just use it for irrigation, or if we were in a need, we would probably say no irrigation of parks if our groundwater basin was that bad. The water is not risky. It's proven technology. It's treated. It's purified. It's actually better than existing groundwater sources. People don't realize that our groundwater basin has naturally occurring contaminants. An anecdotal story is that in Orange County, when they're citing where to put their seawater intrusion and recharge barrier wells, municipal agencies call them up and say, site it next to one of our extraction wells because it will improve our groundwater quality of wells that we draw up. So I want to put that out in terms of understanding the type of water that's going out there. If there's a need and a use for irrigation of recycled water along the route from the Santa Cruz area to the district, we will continue to look at that. And the city, through their water supply advisory planning and their feasibility efforts, they did do a recycled water market study as well as we did. There is not a huge amount of recycled water use for irrigation in our area. We're a very developed community, so putting a double system pipe or things like that, it needs to be further evaluated.
Okay, here's some financial questions. Does the $95 million capital cost of Pure Water Soquel include finance cost? And number two, I'll include all the questions. And number two of that is full operation of Pure Water Soquel for its 45-year life was said to be some $105 million or $2.3 million a year. Are these numbers correct? B, do they include pumping out of the aquifer? And I can't figure out the rest of this question here. It's how much more is Pure Water Soquel something cost? I don't know.
O&M, operation and maintenance.
Oh, operation and maintenance. Okay, how much more is PWS operation and maintenance cost?
And it is present.
Yeah, okay. So if
Great,
you want me
so
to repeat anything along the way.
I might, but let me take a stab at that. So the Pure Water Soquel project costs, as I mentioned before, about $90 million, and that does include what we consider soft costs: engineering, design, permitting, the cost to oversee us building the project, land, and then the capital costs. So it includes all the way to development of the project. The operations costs, we have identified some baseline through our feasibility studies to be upwards of $1 million plus a year. Water supply projects take money and time to operate, whether it be the recycled water project, whether it would be cost burdened by water transfers and then sold to us within that embedded cost. I think I do need help.
Okay, was there?
I'm not sure if I hit all of those. We will be finance costs. We will be identifying and evaluating more of the operational costs going forward. One of the things in terms of developing costs, and I think Heidi's knows this right now, of just trying to shape and define what a project is, so that then you can define how much the capital costs are. You also then have to consider how the project will be run, so that then you can generate the operational costs. And because now that we have completed the environmental review and the project has been approved and we're undertaking the preliminary design, we're able to, with more cost certainty now, take our cost estimates from capital as well as operations to get a clear definition. So within the next year or two, we'll be doing a lot more cost validations, so that I probably, the next time I present, hopefully you guys can invite us again, I can speak more to the operational costs of the project. In terms of financing the project, the finance project costs are included in that, and it's included in the district's finance plan.
Can I add to that? Okay, I just want to add a little context, because I'm not sure how much folks in the audience really think about the cost of water and the cost of projects. The city of Santa Cruz right now, we developed a 20-year capital improvement plan that in today's dollar is upwards of $400 million. And so that's to address the deficiencies and all the older infrastructure that I referred to earlier, but also includes water supply for the city, being the ASR, water transfers. And Melanie touched on the issue of upgrades that we would have to do to our surface water treatment plant, the Graham Hill Water Treatment Plant, to provide water to our neighboring agencies. Improvements at that facility alone are upwards of $100 million. Not solely to meet either the city or the district's water supply needs. There's water quality regulations that we have to comply with. There's a whole slew of reasons we need to do that. But to Melanie's point, water supply projects are expensive. Water is expensive, and it should be, because we're providing quality water to our customers and also to the environment. But so I just wanted to say that to put the $90 million into perspective. These two agencies aren't alone. This is a nationwide issue of agencies treating additional water, more impaired water for sure throughout the nation, and having to be mindful of the environment when we are selecting water supplies and treating it to water quality standards.
And your cost would be burden into your unit cost of water, Heidi?
Yes, and so, longer term, we're all going to be seeing increases in the unit cost of water because we have to, spread the cost of our capital improvements out over our agencies. So that $400 million will be fed into our next rate study as well.
Okay, here's a question, and I'm assuming you're when you say district, you mean Soquel Water District. Since district demand is only 29% of combined city plus district demand, shouldn't district pay 29%?
I don't get that.
Yeah, I don't.
Maybe you don't agree with that.
I don't understand the question.
You don't need. Do I have clarification from who wrote this? It was since district demand is only 29% of combined city plus district demand, shouldn't district pay 29%?
I believe that was at the tail end of another question.
Okay, so this refers to the...
Which had to do with the cost of water transfers, which involved widening two pipes and putting in a well. And what's the cost of widening two pipes and putting in a well? That should come in, I don't know, 50 million or something much lower than Pure Water Soquel. And then, since both districts would benefit, and since the population of Soquel is so much less than Santa Cruz, in other words, 29% of the total, the actual cost to Soquel might be in the neighborhood of, I don't know, 15 or 20 million off the top of my head. I'd have to look at the numbers more carefully. But much less than Pure Water Soquel. So what are the numbers? That's basically what the card says. How much does it cost to widen the potable intertie across 41st Avenue? How much does it cost to widen the pipe from Felton to the lock? And how much does it cost to put in a well field at Felton? That would increase the capacity of the conveyances to bring water here from the river and store it in the aquifer, basically. And it would be very cheap compared to Pure Water Soquel alternative.
So I can answer the question as I understand it, but I think there's probably more to this. And we can talk later if you want to. The water transfer is viewed as a customer. And so our customer costs are, simply said, our capital costs divided by the number of customers and the amount of water that they use. We aren't allowed to kind of divvy up infrastructure by customer use. You basically have to take the entire cost of managing your system and apply that to the rate, the unit cost consumed by the customer. So I think we would still be looking at how to tier rates or develop rates that in the future once we've implemented our capital improvement plan, but it is not legal necessarily to simply select infrastructure that benefits a particular customer and only charge them for that piece of infrastructure.
That doesn't answer the question. And for desal, you did partner with Soquel. You did share the capital cost. That was legal then, apparently. And this would be the same kind of thing. It doesn't. I'd like you to actually answer the question about the cost for the intertie Felton pipeline and the Felton well field, because that's the cost of doing what's called aquifer, bringing a lot of water here, 2.4 times more water. As a matter of fact.
Well, and those exact costs I don't have on the top of my head, so maybe we can talk about this offline.
I think you owe it to the citizens in the middle half of the county to work up a cost estimate for aquifer officially. It's been avoiding it for years. It's not fair to us in the population who's going to have to pay thousands of dollars per man, woman, and child for Pure Water Soquel, as opposed to much lower cost for aquifer.
It sounds like there's quite a bit more to discuss, but we are out of time, and so I think we'll stop the questioning right at this point. till noon, but we probably could go on for a lot longer than this. So, thank you all for coming. And